If Nietzsche were alive today, he wouldn't be refreshing his phone, hoping she replied. He wouldn't be scrolling through her posts, measuring his worth against her silence. While most men spiral into emotional chaos, texting, chasing, explaining, needing, Nietzsche would be still, watching, observing the madness of modern relationships from a position of calm detachment, not bitterness, but clarity. Because Nietzsche understood something most men never learn. Power isn't about how loud you are or how much you demand. It's about how little you need. True power is not taken by force. It's withdrawn in silence. It's the kind of presence that says, I do not chase because I do not need. And once a man no longer needs approval, affection, or attention to feel complete, he enters a rare state, unshakable, magnetic, and completely free. In that space, he doesn't just survive the emotional chaos of others. He rises above it. He becomes unstoppable. Most men today live like prisoners, not in cells made of stone and steel, but in invisible cages built from their own craving. They are trapped by their hunger for attention, their thirst for validation, their silent desperation to be loved. They wake up checking their phones, hoping for a message that makes them feel seen. They twist themselves to be more charming, more impressive, more likable, not because of who they are, but because they fear being forgotten. This is not romance. This is dependency. And dependency is the death of masculine power. Nietzsche saw it clearly long before dating apps and unread messages. He warned that the man who kneels for affection will always be ruled by it. The more you need her to make you feel whole, the more she holds the strings. But the moment you stop needing, when your self-worth no longer hangs on her reactions, you taste something rare. Freedom. And that freedom becomes strength. Because when a man is no longer begging to be chosen, when he no longer flinches at silence, he becomes ungovernable, calm, grounded, untouchable. That's real power, not control over others, but control over yourself. She doesn't test you with logic or clear questions. She doesn't ask, are you strong, or can you lead? Instead, she throws fire. Her tests come wrapped in silence, in sudden distance, in moments where her warmth vanishes and all that's left is emotional turbulence. It's not cruelty, it's instinct. Somewhere deep in her psyche, she wants to know, can you hold your ground when everything feels unstable? And most men, they fail. They argue. They plead. They try to fix things, to explain, to win back the moment with words. But the second you react emotionally, you step into her storm. You stop leading. You lose the frame. Nietzsche understood this game long, before modern psychology gave it a name. He knew that when you enter someone else's emotional chaos, you surrender your strength. Power isn't loud. It doesn't beg to be understood. Power is stillness. Power is calm when the room burns. She can cry, scream, go cold, but you remain unmoved. Not out of indifference, but out of mastery. You don't get swept away because you've already anchored yourself. And that kind of man, the one who doesn't flinch, doesn't defend, doesn't collapse, is unforgettable. He becomes a mountain in her storm. Not because he shouted louder, but because he didn't move at all. That's how kings are forged, not in fury, but in fire they don't let in. Every man carries a wound, an invisible scar stitched into the fabric of his identity. It may come from betrayal, from childhood, from shame, from failure, or from the silent ache of never being enough. Most men try to bury it, to hide it under charm, humor, or confidence. They build walls around their fear, hoping no one will ever see what's behind them. But here's the truth Nietzsche knew. What you avoid doesn't disappear. It waits. And when a woman truly engages with you, she doesn't just see the surface. Whether consciously or not, she begins to test for depth. She looks for your fault lines, not because you want to destroy you, but because she needs to know, have you faced your own fire? If you haven't, your reactions will betray you. You'll get defensive. You'll snap. You'll fall apart when she touches a nerve. But if you've done the inner work, if you walk through your own darkness and made peace with it, there's nothing to expose. She can press, provoke, or prod, but you remain calm. Because your pain no longer controls you. It has become your armor. What once could have broken you is now part of your strength. Nietzsche didn't run from his shadow. He studied it. He sharpened it. And in doing so, he turned vulnerability into power. The man who hides his darkness is fragile. The man who owns it is unbreakable. In today's world, many men fall into the trap of competition, trying to outshine others to earn a woman's attention. They obsess over appearances, rehearsing the perfect lines, buying the trendiest clothes, mimicking what they think will make them stand out. But here's the truth. The moment you begin performing for her approval, you give away your power. You shift from being the author of your life to becoming an actor in her play. Nietzsche would have seen this as a failure of selfhood, a man compromising his becoming for a moment of validation. Real value isn't something you wear. It isn't found in the way you text, the way you pose, or the way you try to impress. It's forged in silence, in solitude, in the daily decision to outgrow who you were yesterday. The man who commits to that path doesn't need to chase attention. He becomes a gravitational force others are drawn to. He builds his mind. He disciplines his body. He sharpens his mission. And in doing so, he radiates something far more powerful than charm. He radiates purpose. You don't win by outperforming the men around you. You win by outperforming the version of yourself that settled for less. Because when you stop trying to be seen and start becoming someone worth seeing, you shift the entire game. You become the one they watch. There's a quiet, deadly strength in the man who holds power but chooses not to use it recklessly. Nietzsche didn't admire weakness, but he also didn't glorify men who were loud, explosive, or out of control. True power, to him, was not found in domination. It was found in restraint. A dangerous man is not one who constantly asserts his strength, but one who possesses the ability to destroy and yet remains composed. This man doesn't shout, doesn't threaten, doesn't need to prove anything, because his presence says it all. He carries a kind of energy that is deeply felt but never flaunted. It's the edge in his calm, the tension in his stillness, the fire in his eyes that never spills over. Women can sense it instinctively. They can feel the difference between the man who is nice because he's weak and the man who is kind because he's mastered his strength. The latter is unforgettable. He could hurt, but never does. He could control, but never needs to. That balance, bet we. Discipline creates a magnetic pull, a mixture of respect, fear, and deep attraction. So don't aim to be the nice guy who gets ignored, or the wild man who gets discarded. Be the man with a hidden blade, silent, steady, and in full command of himself. That's what makes you truly powerful. When she asks why you didn't reply, most men panic. They launch into explanations, desperate to be understood. My phone died. I was caught up in work. I didn't mean to ignore you. These stories may seem harmless, but they reveal something deeper, a need for approval, a fear of disappointing, a desire to be seen in a good light. But Nietzsche would have rejected this impulse entirely. The moment you begin justifying yourself, you give away your power. You shift the dynamic from grounded to apologetic, from sovereign to submissive. A powerful man doesn't over-explain. He simply states the truth without emotion or guilt. I was busy. That's all. No drama. No defensiveness. That kind of answer creates something rare in today's world. Mystery. And mystery is magnetic. When you don't scramble to be understood, you stand out. When you're calm, brief, and unshaken, people, especially women, start leaning in. They begin to wonder, why doesn't he need to explain himself? What else is going on in his world that he values more than my reaction? That curiosity creates gravity, and gravity pulls. So speak less. Be direct. Let silence speak for you. Because in a world that overshares, the man who keeps his center becomes unforgettable. The man who chases a woman gives up something sacred, his direction. The moment he turns his focus from building his life to pursuing haze, he abandons the throne of his own becoming. He begins to orbit her, adjusting his path, timing his texts, calculating his every move based on her attention or absence. And in doing so, he forgets who he is. But the man who builds, quietly, relentlessly, becomes a force of nature. His life becomes a storm, powerful, purposeful, unstoppable. He doesn't need to chase, because he is already moving. He is sculpting his body, sharpening his mind, executing his mission. He doesn't pause for validation. He doesn't detour for affection. And women, sensing this energy, begin to notice. Not because he begged to be seen, but because he became impossible to ignore. She starts to wonder, why doesn't he need me? Why does his silence echo louder than their compliments? That's when the dynamic shifts. She begins to move toward him, not out of manipulation, but out of genuine curiosity and attraction. Because power doesn't plead. It doesn't pursue. It simply is. You don't have to convince her you're valuable. Become valuable. Live like a storm. She can either step into your world or be left behind in the silence you never had to break that she's not testing your charm. She doesn't care how well you speak or how romantic your words sound. Deep down, she wants to know something far more primal, something even she may not consciously understand. Can you hold a frame when everything around you starts to shake? She wants to feel that the man beside her is grounded, unshakable, not through bravado or dominance, but through calm, collected presence. Life will bring storms. Emotions will rise. Challenges will surface. And when they do, she watches not what you say, but what you become. Most men collapse under pressure. They get flustered. They react. They argue. They defend. They let the energy of the moment control them. But you must become the pressure. Not by pushing back harder, but by remaining so internally still that the chaos breaks against you like waves against a rock. When she raises her voice, you don't match it. When she tests your limits, you don't fall apart. You remain steady. That kind of composure is rare, and it commands a respect that no words can earn. It says, I know who I am, and nothing you throw at me can take that away. She feels that. She remembers that. And in a world full of men scrambling to prove their strength, the one who doesn't need to prove anything becomes unforgettable. Being liked is easy. You smile, you say the right things, you agree when it's convenient, and you mold yourself into whatever pleases her in the moment. But here's the brutal truth. Being liked is forgettable. It's a temporary warmth that fades as soon as something more exciting or convenient comes along. Because liking someone is light. It costs her nothing. It doesn't demand depth. It doesn't command memory. Respect, on the other hand, leaves a scar. It lingers. It echoes. And it is earned only when you refuse to compromise who you are just to keep someone comfortable. She may not always like what you say. She may not like how calm you stay when she tries to provoke emotion. But when you don't flinch, when you remain grounded, unapologetic, and rooted in your truth, something happens. She rethinks you. She replays the moment in her head. She wonders why her old tricks didn't work on you. That is the mark of a man who holds a frame. You didn't buy her favor. You didn't bend to be liked. You stood in the fire and stayed silent. And in that silence, you became unforgettable, not because you entertained her emotions, but because you mastered your own emotions rise and fall like waves, beautiful, intense, and often unpredictable. One moment she may shower you with affection, calling you everything she's ever wanted, and the next she may turn cold, distant, or even hostile. This is the nature of emotion. It flows, it shifts, it storms. But if you build your identity on those waves, if you let her mood decide your mindset, you will drown. Nietzsche understood that man must root himself not in how others feel about him, but in what he knows to be true. Truth is not emotional. It is not reactive. Truth is a mountain, solid, immovable, unchanging. So when she praises you, stay centered. When she criticizes you, stay centered. When she pulls you close and then pushes you away, you do not chase, you do not collapse, you simply stand. Your anchor is not her warmth or her wrath. It is your clarity, your values, your direction. This doesn't mean you are cold. It means you are constant. And in a world where most men swing with every emotional gust, the man who remains steady becomes rare. He becomes trusted. He becomes respected. Because when everything around her feels like chaos, she looks to you, not to match her mood, but to be the mountain that never moves.